Somewhere beneath the Earth's junkyards and shattered warships, the raw soul of the world's sharpest machine is waiting to be reborn. The Mark 7 HX needle is forged to a standard that permit fewer than 12,000 units of this grade to leave any factory on Earth in a calendar year.
This bale of scrap, sourced from a vessel broken on the shores of Balochistan and graded at 2.03% carbon.
The carbon tolerance window for incoming scrap is 1.95 to 2.10%. A band no...
The electric arc furnace will bring this scrap to 1600 degrees Celsius in under 40 minutes, a temperature at which even tungsten carbide begins to soften.
The continuous casting process must extract heat from the molten core at exactly 450 degrees per minute. Any fraction for these. At 1600 degrees, the carbon atoms from the scrap begin to dissolve into the iron lattice. The reheating furnace brings the billet to 1150 degrees, the temperature at which the body-centered cubic iron lattice transforms to face-centered cubic. 8 rolling passes in 90 seconds. The billet exits as a 4.2 mm wire rod traveling at over 200 kilometers per hour. The batch traceability tag is the steel's passport. From this moment until the finished needle ships, the first draw pass reduces the cross-section by 56%, an elongation that aligns the grain structure along the wire's axis. The third draw pass brings the wire to 950 microns, a diameter at which the grain boundaries are aligned within 2 degrees of the wire axis. 920 millimeters, exactly the length needed to allow for tip grinding, barb cutting, and heat treatment distortion. The point is ground to a 12-degree taper with a final tip diameter of 900 microns, a geometry that allows the needle to penetrate a
furnace. Each of the 14 barbs is cut to a depth of 120 microns, with a re-entry angle of 25 degrees.
The barb cut preforms must enter the vacuum hardening furnace within 4 hours of cutting. Any delay
at 980 degrees Celsius in a near-perfect vacuum, the chromium and carbon atoms in the D3 steel dissolve completely into a single phase.
The nitrogen quench transforms the face-centered cubic austenite into body-centered tetragonal martensite in under 2 seconds.
At 63 on the Rockwell C scale, the needle's surface is harder than a file.
The 2-hour temper at 180 degrees Celsius allows carbon atoms to diffuse out of the supersaturated martensite, reducing internal stress by 60%.
The double temper protocol converts retained austenite to tempered martensite and precipitates fine chromium carbide.
The magnetite layer is not a coating, it is a conversion of the steel surface itself, growing inward and outward simultaneously to form a crystalline oxide. The final cylindrical grinding pass removes any straightness deviation greater than 3 microns, ensuring that when the needle enters a The final 0.5 micron diamond polish reduces the tip's surface roughness to less than 10 nanometers raw.
Correction. The 40x inspection is the last human judgment the needle will ever receive. After this, it belongs.
The VCI film releases molecules that form an invisible, 1-molecule thick layer on the steel surface, a barrier that will
The case is sealed at less than 30% relative humidity, an environment inside which the needle could rest for a decade, and emergence. The digital certificate linked to this QR code contains every process parameter recorded since the scrap bale crossed the Albstadt receiving dock. The temperature data logger will record every thermal fluctuation during the needle's journey, a chain of custody that guarantees the customer that the VCI.
At 500 times magnification, the barb's geometry reveals its secret, a 25-degree re-entry angle that gets.
From the broken hulls of ships on a Pakistani shore to the mirror tip of a needle that will pierce ballistic armor, the Wolfsburg offcuts arrive pre-alloyed with chromium and molybdenum from their original tool steel specification, a metallurgical inheritance. The charge blend algorithm calculates the optimal scrap mix for every furnace heat, ensuring that the final billet chemistry never deviates from the D3 specification by Mobilis. At night, the melt shop runs with a skeleton crew of 7, but the furnace never stops, because cooling and reheating the refrace. The continuous casting machine never stops while the furnace is in operation. A billet is cut every 90 seconds.
The reheating furnace consumes 2,000 cubic meters of natural gas per hour, the energy equivalent of heating 400 homes.
The eddy current test detects cracks as small as 50 microns in the rod surface. Defects that, if undetected,
The phosphate lubricant is not merely a coating. It reacts chemically with the steel surface to form a crystalline layer of iron phosphate.
The cold drawing process increases the wire's tensile strength by 40% through work hardening.
The point is ground in a single clamping to eliminate concentricity error, and the tip and the shank are coaxial to within 2 microns. The cubic boron nitride wheel is dressed every 40 tips with a diamond tool that restores the profile within 5 microns.
Each diamond-coated end mill cuts approximately 4,000 barbs before is replaced. A tool hundreds.
Any barb that shows a burr larger than 10 microns at this stage will be recut, because after vacuum hardening to 6.3 Rockwell fissions, the vacuum furnace removes air so completely that the remaining gas pressure is 1/1000th of atmospheric. And to Jemson. The 45-minute soak at 980 degrees allows the chromium carbides to fully dissolve. If the soak
The first temper cycle draws carbon atoms from the strained martensite lattice to form tiny transition carbides. A process.
The double temper protocol was standardized in 1962 after a batch of single-tempered needles failed prematurely in a Delo loom.
The Rockwell C-scale uses a diamond cone with a 120-degree included angle, the same geometry as the needle's own timbers.
The magnetite layer grows to 3 microns thick in 8 minutes. It is not added but converted from the steel itself, so it cannot. The magnetite thickness is measured on every needle. If the layer exceeds 4 microns, it will spall under the repeated impact of the bar. The final grinding pass corrects any distortion introduced. The CMM rejects any needle with a barb deviation greater than 5 microns, a standard that rejects approximately 1 needle in every 2 seconds. The 6-stage lapping is performed entirely by hand, because no machine can replicate the tactile sensitivity required. The 40x visual inspection is the final human interaction with the needle. After this, it will be sealed in its case. The VCI film releases molecules that form a 1-molecule thick protective layer on the steel surface. The case is sealed at less than 30% relative humidity, an environment in which the needle could rest for a decade and emerge as perfect as the day it was packed. The QR code on this pallet links to a digital certificate containing 2,300 data points, a lifetime record that will outlast the needle itself. The container is climate controlled to maintain 18 to 22 degrees Celsius for the entire journey, a guarantee that the
From Gadani to Albstadt, from ship hull to mirror tip, the giant needle has traveled 9,000 kilometers. At 500 times magnification, the barb reveals its secret, a 25-degree angle and 120 microns. From the broken hulls of ships on a Pakistani shore to the mirror tip of a needle that will pierce ballistic armor. Tomorrow, another bale of scrap will arrive, and the furnace will burn again. Because the world's sharp instruments. The VCI film is impregnated with sodium nitrite and benzotriazole, compounds that vaporize slowly inside the seal.
The aluminium case is purged with dry nitrogen before sealing, reducing the internal oxygen content below 1%.
The foam insert is cut to within 0.2 of a millimeter of the wrap needle's profile, a fit that ensures the needle will survive a drop from 2.
Each pallet carries 20 cases, a total value exceeding $50,000, and the stretch wrap film is applied at a tension of 40 newtons.
The digital shipment file is transmitted to the customer before the container leaves the factory, so that by the time the needles arrive, the QR code on this pallet can be scanned by customs officials, freight forwarders, and the customer's receiving department. The QR code on this pallet can be scanned by customs officials, freight forwarders, and the customer's receiving department.
The container's climate control system will maintain an internal temperature of 20 degrees Celsius plus or minus 2 degrees for the entire journey.
The truck will reach Stuttgart Airport in 9 minutes. From there, the container will be loaded onto an air freight pallet and flown to Toulouse-Blagnac.
Nations. Every needle shipped to China is tracked by the German Federal Office for Economic Affairs and Export Control, a requirement that
The sea freight container will travel by truck to Hamburg, by ship to Shanghai, and by barge to Changzhou, a journey of intense rating inspection. The Airbus receiving inspection accepts fewer than 1 in 5,000 Groz-Beckert for quality discrepancies. Intense rating inspection. The Airbus receiving inspection accepts fewer than 1 in 5,000 Groz-Beckert for quality discrepancies. The needle that began as a rusted hull plate on a Pakistani beach is now part of a machine that produces the fiber preforms for Airbus A350 fuselage panels. The needle will make this same journey, tip, barb, release, 80 million times before it is retired, each cellular. The Airbus Toulouse facility consumes 4,000 giant needles per week. Each one, the bale that arrives this morning will become a needle in 48 hours, and that needle will be punching through aramid fiber mats somewhere in the world 3 days later.
In 48 hours, this bale will be a needle discard, and somewhere in the world, a loom will be waiting.
From the broken hulls of ships to the sharpest point on Earth, neath, the giant needle was never mined, only reborn.